how can you start finally mastering those difficult guitar solos that you always dreamed of but gave up on. The reason why you can't achieve that level of skill isn't because it's impossible or because you needed to start guitar when you were 3 years old and you started late. It's because you are missing a crucial element in your practice routine that I'm going to teach you in this video. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You see a guitarist on social media playing something incredible and you go, holy shit, I need to learn to play like that. And you say to yourself, this time I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna stick with it and I'm not gonna give up till I get it down. So with your new resolve and excitement, you get to work. But after hours of practice, you decide that you can't seem to get to that level still, and that fire quickly dies out. Does that sound familiar? Look, I was the same way before I learned the secret that I'm going to teach you in this video. And this is the secret that finally allowed me to master some of the pieces on guitar that I dreamed of learning when I was a young kid, like Cliffs of Dover. So let's get straight to the solution. First, we need to understand the fundamental flaw in your approach with guitar. And it's this: you are not practicing effectively. You might think you are, but if you've plateaued, you really aren't. You see, most people think effective practice means that you repeat something enough times, and if you put in enough hours, surely you'll get to your goal. Wrong. The good news is it takes much less time of daily practice than you actually think. You see, when I used to give up on stuff in the past, I used to use the excuse, it's because I need to practice more and I just don't have that kind of time, so screw it. I used to hear my guitar heroes talk about how they practice 5 to 7, 8 hours in a day. So I automatically assumed that I would never get to that level and play like them because I don't have that kind of time. But the thing is I did learn to play like most of my guitar heroes. And I did this with just 1 hour of practice a day, sometimes less. And it's because this 1 hour practice method that I use has a secret component that makes it so effective. And it's called the flow state. A flow state is a state of complete and total concentration on the task at hand. It is when everything else disappears and the learner is completely immersed in a state of super learning. Think of Neo in the Matrix. And that's how I was able to start playing what I showed you. It's because I learned how to access the flow state of learning every day. So how do you access flow? It can only be accessed in one way, and that is when the challenge of the task just slightly exceeds your skill set. That's the formula, so let me say it again and pay attention. Flow can only be accessed when the challenge of the task slightly exceeds your skill set. So what you're learning and practicing can only slightly be out of your comfort zone. Because you see, when something is just barely out of your comfort zone and the mistakes are fixable, this puts us in a state of super concentration and flow. But if there's too much friction, if it's too far out of your comfort zone, we hit a wall and become frustrated. And if there's too little friction, we simply don't progress. We're too comfortable. So there is a sweet spot where super learning occurs, and it's right at the edge of your ability, right at the edge of your comfort zone. For us guitar players, this means that the speed at which we're practicing should only be slightly too fast. It also means that the amount of notes that I'm focusing on and the skill level of the thing that I'm doing should only be slightly too many notes and slightly too difficult. To demonstrate what this looks like on guitar, let's take this legato exercise. The metronome is a tool that you have to use every day because it is a tool that tells you the exact speed at which something is slightly out of your reach, which is what's going to put us in flow. Most people don't practice with the metronome. They just pick up the guitar and they go. They just bounce around in states of too much friction or too little friction. And this makes it impossible to access flow state. So I want to be at a speed where I start to make just a few mistakes with the metronome. This is the sweet spot. And to find this sweet spot, I start slowly at my comfort speed. This should feel easy and relaxed with virtually no mistakes. And this is where I want to start and then gradually increase until I reach the edge of my ability. Well, I'm at 80 beats per minute. And this speed is my comfort speed. It feels decent at this speed. I'm not really making any mistakes here. So from here, I slowly increase the speed until I start to make just a few mistakes and it starts to feel a little out of control or a little inconsistent. So I'm speeding it up to about 115 beats per minute. So to you, that might sound okay, but to me, it feels tense. It feels a little uncomfortable, and my timing is slightly off. Yeah, maybe I'm a bit of a perfectionist, but this to me is the edge of my ability. This is where I'm going to be able to lock into flow and hyper focus on different details that are going to allow me to clean this area up. A really important note is that if you're making any mistakes, even if it's a really slow speed, that's the sweet spot. For me, I'm at pretty high speeds right now, but before, when I first started this, the edge of my ability that got me locked into flow every day was at a much lower speed. Coming back to my sweet spot, 115 beats per minute, we're doing sextuplets. Okay, so now that we're in the sweet spot, we have to address one mistake at a time. This is a crucial component of accessing the flow state. The biggest mistake that people make is that even if they're using the metronome right at the edge of their ability, they're in the perfect sweet spot, they get sucked into mindlessly repeating the whole phrase or solo over and over again. The mindless repetition is the opposite of flow. That's when you just get chronically and obsessively locked in and your brain is kind of checked out and you're just compulsively repeating something over and over again. This is not intentional. This is just putting your brain on autopilot and just going. To access flow, you can't do this. You have to be very intentional about what you're fixing. So we're going to intentionally zoom on a specific section of this little lick. Then from there, we're going to zoom into a different mistake and systematically fix one mistake at a time and then put it all back together again. The first mistake is already right off the bat is timing. Okay, it doesn't sound too sloppy, but this is a raw speed issue. So really what I need to do is I need to start training fewer notes here, and I'm gonna go from the first downbeat to the second downbeat, or the first click to the second click. So like this. So like this. Right, that's what I want to do. So that, if I put it in context, is going to be, so that pull off, that note is going to be where I end the small chunk that I'm working on. And this hyper focusing thing is going to help me really lock into a flow state here. So what I'm noticing here is that I need to be on the tips of my fingers and relax my fingers and wrist position a lot more. So I'm not just compulsively repeating it and hopefully it gets better. I'm focusing on these details of being on the tips of my fingers a little bit more because we're doing legato, and I'm also focusing on hyper relaxing here. So I'm gonna go through the sequence one beat at a time like that, and I'm gonna focus on details that I notice until I can do the whole sequence again. I can spend quite a bit of time on this, and I can spend a whole practice session doing this just on this exercise until I can do the whole thing perfectly at 115. And once I can do the whole thing perfectly and it feels relaxed and nice at 115, then I can increase my speed and achieve a new edge of my ability. That way I'm never having too much friction, but I'm never having too little friction, and I'm always locked into a flow state during my practice. Again, most people, they don't use a metronome. They don't lock into a specific speed and a specific flow state in their practice, and they're just mindlessly repeating, or they have too much friction or too little friction. So again, to access a flow state, or in other words, a state of super learning every day, you need to make sure that the challenge of the task only slightly exceeds your skill level. That means you need to dial in your speed with the metronome and fix one mistake at a time. So give that a try in your daily practice and you'll see an insane increase in skill. And just to close out here, if you don't understand the fundamental mechanics of lead guitar skills, like legato, like I was doing, or alternate picking, or sweep picking, or tapping, or whatever the lead guitar skill may be, If you don't understand the mechanics of these skills, it's going to be very difficult to accelerate your learning, even if you know how to access a flow state. And that's why I created the Guitar Prodigy system, where I teach you how to unlock all of the mechanics of all of these different lead guitar skills. So if that interests you, click the link in the description to sign up.